Okay, so we all use regularly our smartphone to communicate with other people, but how does that influence our relation with other people? Do you think relations become more intimate? Who thinks so? None of you. Only one person. And who thinks relationships become more distant then? Okay, a few people. And what about the rest? I would love to know, but I don't have time. So maybe I'll speak you in the corridor after this. Our third keynote speaker holds the prestigious position of more than human design professor at Politecnico di Milano in Italy. She is a pioneer in studies on metadesign and more than human design. She actually worked here at the Technical University in Delft from 2012 till the end of last year. Today, she will explore with us the question, how can we reimagine the contribution of design for loving the world? Please give it up for Elisa Giaccardi. Elisa, welcome on stage. And I'll give you a hand.
Yes,
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks. It's really great to be here, actually back to Delft after only 2 months, to give this talk. Design has the power to change the world. Through design, we have transformed skylines, we have created healthier living environments, and we have advocated for more comfortable lifestyles. And throughout these transformations, there is a special connection between design and technology. And it is this transformative power of design and the role of design in it that always fascinates me, because every time that we think and do design, an opportunity space open that we can cultivate to unfold new relations and experience the world in richer ways. But design is also part of the problem. Through design, we have transformed the planet to meet our needs and desires. And in doing that, we have also transformed ourselves, reduced the burden of remembering birthdays and phone numbers. We have delegated the trading, automated the trading of stocks to machines, and the decisions on insurance claims increasingly we're delegating in more and more spheres of our life decisions to machines that are increasingly capable but intrinsically opaque. When on the 6th of January of 2021, the US Capitol building in Washington, D.C. was attacked by a mob of protesters of the then US President Donald Trump, just 2 months after his defeat in the presidential elections, we were shocked. The same social media technologies that we used during the pandemic that had kept extended families closed now had torn a country apart. Americans were completely polarized, and it felt unreal, just like the pandemic. And in that moment, I asked myself about the digital transformation that we're undergoing and whether design still unfolds futures, if it still is a tool of imagination rather than serving logics that were born and cultivated elsewhere. And I came to the conclusion that the world is trapped in modernity. Enlightenment has given us great things. It gave us rationality, scientific inquiry, human rights, and freedom. It also gave us change and progress and complexity. And at the center of that complexity, it's him. The Vitruvian man, the measure of all things. As Anushka Bailey describes it, with his drive to conquer not just land, but mind, to square the circle, he exists as is his right at the center of the known universe. And this is the legacy that we inherit and we strain with as we grapple with this growing complexity. We strive against the very ideals that once propelled us forward. What had liberated us from the shackles of medieval thought, from religious dogma and superstition, is now constraining us into the very narrow confines of a human-centric microcosm, preventing us from understanding the profound interdependencies that exist between us humans and the broader ecosystems, natural and artificial, that sustain us. And so it's not surprise that as designers, we are trapped in the same narrow mindset. Design as we know it actually was born from the logic of industrial production, which traces back to modernity. And throughout history, we have developed approaches to design that were primarily meant to cater to human needs and desires, oftentimes at the expense of other life species, and oftentimes also privileging certain human needs and desires of certain humans over others. What is happening is that it's really hard to go beyond the methods that we have developed, because ultimately, though they enabled us to do things right, what they embed in them, what they embody, is an idea of control. So we must not forget that though caring for human needs and desires in the context of mass production and technology development must not be overstated, central to these design practices is a notion of control. When we look at the consequences, the picture is bleak. On one side, we are eroding the fundamental principles of our democracies, and on the other hand, we are depleting Earth's resources and risking planetary collapse. So where's the love in that? But we can do something. Over the last 20 years, I embarked on a quest to step out of the square that traps the Vitruvian man in this human-centric universe. I use technology to try and experiment ways of decentering myself, to engage with the perspectives of non-human entities, and try to understand the deeper interdependencies that exist between us and these broader ecosystems of natural and artificial entities. In this quest, technology has played an important role. But what I come to understand and to realize over time is that in order to step away from human-centeredness, in order to free ourselves from the box of the Vitruvian man, we need to release some form of control. And that ultimately needs to open up a design space that was previously reserved just for humans, also to other entities, to animals and plants, microorganisms, as well as algorithms, in a different way. What it means that we need to let go of some of that control that is so central to the design practices that are born from industrialization, and instead engage a more responsive and nuanced way of doing design. One of the projects I missed the talk of Joost, but was probably mentioned before and just came out. I think good news is that actually our ability to engage non-human entities as stakeholders is evolving, and projects like the Bauhaus of the Seas Sail or the Embassy of the North Sea are fantastic projects that show us how people can learn to nourish regenerative cultures cultures that are not concerned with mitigating harm, but more concerned with restoring and replenishing the ecosystem. And this is a beautiful example of how, as people, we can learn to listen and speak to non-human entities so that we can tap into broader ecosystems of local knowledge and capabilities, and together with them sustain a symbiotic coexistence with the ocean. See if I manage. There. At the same time, though, technology advances and our social, economical, political systems, they just continue to get more and more interconnected. And we feel like complexity is just growing and it's getting out of control, and that taking these positions perhaps is not the right way to go. We struggled. The pace of change is so fast that it's hard for individuals and even organizations to keep up. And we feel disoriented and we struggle to navigate this uncertain terrain, a world that it feels more complex and unpredictable than ever. Anthropologists refer to this with the idea of cultural ratcheting. The idea is that as we evolve as societies, we accumulate knowledge and practices and technologies that eventually make us leap forward to a point from which is quite difficult to return. As we leap forward through technology, communication, and whatnot, we forge a path in a way of no return. And that's how we're feeling, right? We're feeling a bit of that these days. And so maybe why shouldn't we, instead than talking to the ocean, hold a little bit more tight onto that center? Actually, we were told as designers that technology is the best potential, has the best potential to help us manage complexity. And indeed, it gave us control during industrialization, right? It helped designers gain greater control over the production process. But as complexity grows and we grapple with it, even if we feel like we should hold on to that center, our feeling, our instinct is wrong. What do we do, though? We add more technology. Even if we feel like maybe it's not the right way to go, at least I feel it's not the right way to go, maybe some of you are feeling it's not the right way to go, we're still trained as designers that technology is the best solution. And so we add more technology, we strive for more control. What is exemplar of this phenomenon are digital forests. Digital forests, for those that do not know, are technological solutions that transform natural ecosystems in systems that can be monitored and managed and optimized with technology. They really change the way in which cities and us perceive the natural ecosystem as something that is vibrant instead. Urban green spaces become green infrastructures, something that can be programmed to provide us with ecosystemic benefits for us and for the planet. And usually, in digital forests are represented through data. And these data are collected through a variety of technological devices, sensing technologies, then processed by algorithms, visualized in digital twins, computational simulations. Most of what these new forest management practices strive for is understanding how to maintain or augment, optimize the overall canopy cover of an urban forest. And so they collect data and they analyze them in order to ensure that that's the case. Even when we take a slightly broader view of urban forests, in these management practices, looking not just at immediate benefits for us as humans, and as a consequence for the planet, or vice versa, but always in relation to us, really. And we look at broader socioeconomic benefits that urban forests might provide. This is a beautiful project, by the way, an attempt to move beyond the carbon tunnel vision of just thinking in terms of clean air and wind. But even in this case, when we look at these social cultural benefits and urban forests providing us with these benefits, like, for example, better walkability or reduced crime levels or better mental health, we need to forget that forests are important not just for us as humans, but also for animals and other ecosystems within those forests. And so if we don't want to replicate those extractive economies and those multi-species inequalities that brought us here in the first place, then we need to rekindle a different connection between design and technology, because it's not that technology is bad, but it really is stemming out, like our design practices, from an idea of control. And the problem is that control is a paradox in a human-centered world that is facing complexity. We corral all these vast intricacies of the world into the square of the Vitruvian man because we want to control them, because as we feel like everything is getting out of control, we want to control it more. We want to be able to model it, just to realize that we're amplifying, magnifying complexity. Control compounds complexity. It brings more complexity. The only way is to embrace complexity and navigate it, or better, dance with it, as Pedro showed us, and look for ways, for alternative approaches to design and technology that are more inclusive and more responsive. So let me tell you a story about how we attempted to transcend these traditional boundaries in working within a project on urban forests on this idea of more than human forest bodies, and how we attempted in this way to bring non-human perspectives, sensibilities, and intentionalities to the table so that we could look at the data and use technology in a different way, so that an urban forest could become not just a collection of trees, but remain a vibrant, living, breathing organism. This is Vliegenbos, Amsterdam's oldest green lung. And the people that frequently visit Vliegenbos say that you never get tired of how beautiful it is. According to the seasons, the vegetation changes its colors, the birds change their repertoire. And even if it's a small and compact urban green space, there is wilderness as you venture through these winding paths. This is the setting for our story. The city of Amsterdam has engaged in this new forest management practices because Vliegenbos is a very important central green lung for the city. And so in the attempt of focusing on maintaining and optimizing its health and longevity, it has begun to use data for monitoring the canopy of the forest. And this is where we came in. But before showing you the results of the work we have done and what we've done, let's for a second reflect on how we relate to our own body when it comes to our health. We are to some extent attuned to our bodily sensations, but we're also using a lot of electronic devices like smartwatches, electronic scales, and performance tracking app that are becoming very familiar companions of our routines in how we monitor, track, and take care of our health. Now, when it comes to a forest body, we tend to mirror our understanding of our own body onto what a forest is, instead of understanding and looking at its true nature. And so we are using, again, devices like drones and data analytics, and maybe even other bodies like expert arborists to monitor the forest as it was something that breathes for us, rather than us breathing with them. But did you know that more than 30 trillion cells in our body, less than 1/3 are human? 70–80% of the cells in our body are bacteria, viruses, and fungi. So our body is already more than human. It's teeming with a multitude of other organisms that we're just not attuned to. And so when we take care of our organism and we monitor through those devices, we're actually monitoring also the health and longevity of these organisms that we don't see and cannot attune to. And a bit the same is happening with forests. We use all of these devices to monitor them as it was our body, but in reality, Flickenbos, as in all forests, hosts in it a very pulsating and vibrating ecosystem made of a variety of different creatures with very different sensibilities, very different intentionalities, and spanning across very different spatial dimensions and also temporal dimensions. And so, while traditionally, in order to interpret data, forest data, we use algorithms and sensing technologies, what we wanted to do is, starting from this idea of a more than human forest body, we wanted to use the techniques that we have developed over the year for decentering ourselves to attune not only to these entities, but also more specifically to how they contribute to the health and longevity of the ecosystem. What are their attributes, their senses, almost like senses, that help us learn about the ecosystem, that help us understand how the actions and behaviors that they have within this ecosystem also contribute to the resilience of such ecosystem. And so we asked participants in a series of workshops to attune to all of these different creatures, the earthworms and the lichens and the red fox and the towley owl and the bees and the common toad. And then we asked them to deconstruct them, to look at them not just as classified entities, but as breathing, living bodies that have very unique senses and very unique ways of making sense of the data that they're sensing. Singing like the toad because the spring is coming, or burrowing because more dark is needed for nesting. And then we ask them to take those deconstructed bodies and make parallels between our own body and the body of the forest, and reconstruct the forest body as a more than human body. And through all of these very experimental exercising of attuning, decentering, deconstructing, reassembling our bodies and the bodies of the entities, the animals and microorganisms that live in this ecosystem, we were attempting to develop a different design approach to how data can make sense and how these digital twins can be interacted upon, so that we really could move beyond this idea of a digital forest just as a collection of trees. And the result is an agent-based model and a simulation interface that has as its core this idea of more than human body. It's not a wow picture, so it's just a bit geeky. But what is really interesting here is the shift in ontology that we attempted through this model, because we went beyond, or at least we tried to go beyond traditional classifications, both biological and in the system computationally, of what an entity is. And we started to, as you maybe can see, at the different entities in terms of what their attributes. And so you can select different attributes and different behaviors, and then through the interface, you can connect these different attributes and behaviors, these sort of transcorporeal entities, into like a living community. So the polygon very primitively represent a living community of more than entities, a web of interconnected entities that each of them can play a role in the resilience and of the ecosystem, or in maintaining the health and the longevity of the ecosystem. And so the simulation here also allows you to navigate across a different time scale and multidimensionally, because every living entity is a breathing entity that opens very different relations to the forest and projects very different futures across different timelines. What you can see here on the left is the digital representation of what I just explained, whereas on the right is instead a graphic and artistic rendering that was produced during one of our workshops. The result really, it's humble, honestly. And at the same time, when you look at it in terms of the kind of technologies that are deployed today, is provocative and revolutionary. It's attempted to change the ontology. It's attempting in a way to computationally, if that is even possible, grapple with this idea that was coined by Karen Barad of the agential cut, right? Every polygon is an act of interfacing. Every polygon, every collective living community that we look at and begin interacting and simulating with is a translation in design practice of this idea of agential cut, this indeterminate seam between subject and object, and I quote, where boundaries don't hold, times, places, and beings all bleed into each other. And so it's a modest attempt to stride for getting out of that box of the Vitruvian Man, dissolving not just the box, but even the body of the Vitruvian Man, so that we can actually renew the connection between the design and technology and try to move beyond relinquishing some control and move beyond those notions that so much define design as we know it today. I believe that there is no other way than attempting this. It is in this attempt of moving beyond human-centeredness and relinquishing control that we can explore how technology can no longer be just a tool of control and exploitation, but again, a creative material for exploring different sensibilities and capacities, for connecting to the world in richer ways, and ultimately having in mind our collective survival as the first priority. And so, and with this, I have no idea what time it is because I rehearsed so many times and I don't know if I'm going short or I'm going long. With this, it ends this tale of hope and love and a bit of weirdness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elisa Giaccardi. Thank you for all your insights into more than human design. And we will see you back at the wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you are all more than welcome to join the wrap up at 7:45. And that wrap up will be given by Wouter van Noort and Jessica van der Schalk. And all the keynote speakers will join them here on stage. So I hope you like this last keynote and have fun at the wrap up. Bye.